Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men and new year, new sex, your mind, heart, and body. So, as I start my 31st year as a gay men specialist psychotherapist and life career relationship executive coach, and AASECT, American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, certified sex therapist, I challenge myself to think of expansive, new ideas. The new year for all of us is like a blank piece of paper to write on, or a blank canvas to paint on, or a blank computer screen to type on. I don't so much take, New Year's resolutions so much as just giving thought to a subtle shift in focus or perspective that I'd like to take in the new year. Like gently shifting your weight from one foot to another. And I'd like to encourage you to do the same, not by setting yourself up for disappointment by abandoning, too ambitious resolutions, but just a more relaxed movement in our thinking that will be easier to sustain and a little bit more self-affirming about how we make gradual but positive changes that mean something for us in some area of our lives. Think about the various needs or curiosities, desires, or priorities you have as we start the new year. And upon reflection, what would you like less of this year compared to last year? What are the stressful things that you'd like to kind of trim down and not so much be burdened by this year like last year? Conversely, what would you like more of? What was fun about the last year that you would like to do more of this year, to kind of make a point, to point these things up and enhance them like you're cultivating a crop in a farmer's field. And this can apply to work, your relationships, your health, exercise, diet, finances, family, community, all of the roles that we find ourselves functioning in during the course of the year. And of course, these are the areas that I work on, with my clients, either couples or individuals. But for right now, let's apply this to sex. It's a new year, so what kind of new sex would you like to cultivate for yourself this year? What do you feel would be interesting, fun, exciting, challenging, rewarding, satisfying in terms of how sex affects your mind, heart, and body? So let's start with the mind. Number one, the mind. So currently, how do you think about sex? When you hear the word sex, what comes to mind? Is it a positive feeling? A negative one? A scary one? An exciting one? How does that compare to how you want to be thinking about sex? In your current feelings and set of interests and values, what kind of changes would you like to make in your sexual expression repertoire if you had the kind of year in sex that you would like to have this year? Would you shift your weight from being inhibited to being more disinhibited? From feeling unworthy about your body or yourself to feeling worthy and valuable? From criticizing yourself to appreciating yourself, even if we have to say perfectly imperfect. From self-denial to indulgence. From carelessness to intention and purpose. From isolation to connection. From guilt to confidence. From shyness to boldness, from fear to courage. In cognitive therapy, we believe that consciously changing your thoughts changes your feelings, which changes your behavior, which changes your experience of the world subjectively and interpersonally, hopefully for the better. So changing our thoughts comes from a place of inner self-empowerment. It challenges this notion that we're somehow helpless to change our circumstances. We can always change something about ourselves or our situation, even if it's just changing our attitude or perspective about them. My book from 2013, Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want, discusses this in more detail. So Okay, fine. I'm plugging the book. If you're interested in the book, it's about closing the gap between how life is and how you would like it to be in important areas of your life that I mentioned earlier. Your health, your career, your mental health, your finances, your relationships, your role in your community, all of that. And it's not really gay specific. It's more of a broader audience self-help book of the many, right? But if you're interested in that, I don't know, I get like 50 cents of royalty on that. But it's like, if you're interested, Amazon or Lulu, LULU.com, it was the direct publisher. Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want by Ken Howard. Okay, end of plug. So, it's an old saying that the greatest sex organ is our mind. In BDSM play, mind games that play with the dynamics of dominance and submission can be fun, almost like riding a roller coaster. So ask yourself, if I really put my head in the game this year about sex, what would I be changing about how I think of myself and my partners? So number 2, let's look at the heart of the mind, heart, and body. So while recreational sex or hookups, whatever you want to call them, certainly have their place in gay men's leisure time outside of probably your very demanding work life, there is always an emotional or heart component to sex. Love-making with a primary partner or spouse exemplifies this, but so can consensual non-monogamy or polyamory, where love and affection in your life might mean more than one person. That's not right for everybody, but for a certain percentage of our national in the U.S. or global population, non-monogamous or polyamorous polycule relationships actually function fairly well. I was recently discussing this with a client who has a primary partner and a husband, but also has a consistent fuck buddy. Qualitatively, the feelings can be different. His feelings for his husband have a long history, a shared life and owning a home together, a blending of the in-laws of their families, and a commitment to, an indefinite future together. But there is also a brotherly, fraternal love of sorts that he shares with a long-term fuck buddy that is different. It's more like a friend or a pal to pal around with, friend with benefits. Whether that's doing recreational activities in the community, like going to a concert or the movies, or in the bedroom. Even things like group sex, or sex in a bathhouse or a sex club or at a pool party or something, can have a heart aspect to it, of a sense of positive masculinity. We're talking so much lately about toxic masculinity, but there's a positive masculinity that's on the whole other side of that. And it's a shared sense of identity and brotherhood. We sometimes come together in cohesion as gay men because we are a globally oppressed minority. Even when we're, white men and have white privilege and male privilege and all that stuff, we're still an oppressed minority globally. Now, with all due respect to women and people of color and people with disabilities and, the other groups that take a lot of crap in this world, but, gay white men are still an oppressed minority. And once in a while I have to, assert that idea because it validates the struggles that we have. So what changes would you like to see in yourself this year about the heart aspect of sex? Is your goal to move from disconnected to connected, whether with a trick or hookup or a partner? From isolation to joy? From shying away from the other to opening our embrace to others, even kind of casually, just warmly and fraternally? From taking it all for granted to savoring your connection with other guys? From keeping our desires and our edgiest fantasies secret to stating and expressing our fantasies and inviting others to meet them with us consensually and using all the principles of sexual health that I talked about in another episode about the 6 principles of sexual health from Vigorito and Braun Harvey as applied more specifically to gay men. The innovative work of Dr. Justin Lehmiller, author of the book Tell Me What You Want, describes research that couples who share their sexual fantasies with one another report higher levels of relationship satisfaction when they're studied. And couples who act on those fantasies report higher levels still. So, we're talking about 6 Principles of Sexual Health. That was by Doug Braun-Harvey and Michael Vigorito from their book, Treating Out of Control Sexual Behavior, which I discussed in another episode, but that is their alternative to this whole sex addiction malarkey that I cry foul on a lot. There's a whole different approach that's much more affirmative, and I work with guys on that myself. So number 3, let's look at the body. Of course, changes or goals to our sex life this year certainly involve our bodies. The mind and the heart are important, but sex is primarily a physical activity and a very primal human need that goes back through the ages, not unlike the need for food or water or sleep or protection from the elements or protection from heat and cold extremes. Just like that saying, the heart wants what it wants, the body wants what it wants too. It's said among my therapist colleagues, when it comes to sex, if you fight your body will win. This is why gay men worldwide risk violence, oppression, discrimination, legal risks, and many hardships in virulently anti-gay environments, but still seek to connect with other gay men, despite those risks. Just like straight people, sexual instinct is a primary drive. While it is a problem in many situations that don't adhere to the 6 principles of health. I mean, we've got some sexual drama and some real problems in the world. Things like sexual assault and non-consensual situations and exploitation. Okay, that is a real global problem. But we're talking about here is about adult or peer adolescent, high schoolers who are not legal adults might be sexually active, gay, straight, whatever. But we're talking about experiences among fully consensual partners free of coercion. So that said, what do you feel your body wants this year? Do you want more of something? Do you want less of something? What do I want to feel or experience, or maybe experiment with? I don't know what that feels like, but maybe I'm curious about seeing what that feels like and see if there's a difference between what I think it might be like and what it actually is like. That is a big thing, I think, in BDSM and kink plays. People think, what? What's that? It's a little different when you're kind of looking at it and say, why in the world would you want to do that? Then when you experience it very sensorially and very dynamically, people are like, oh, okay, wow, now I get it. Why didn't I try that sooner? That's fun. But, what have you experienced before sexually that you want to again? Some guys have a go-to, their tops, their bottoms. They like oral, they like anal, they like being a side, they like all kinds of favorite, activities, even just making out or something. Most people have a go-to that would be kind of their favorite fetish or their favorite activity if they could really choose from, the top of the list. Think about what you've not experienced, but you have a curiosity about feeling. So in this new year, what would you like to think or feel more of about or in your body? What do you want to feel less of or de-emphasize or liberate yourself from? Especially with things like feeling bad about yourself or shame or guilt or, the bad stuff. What changes do I want to make in my approach to sexual encounters this year? Do I want to bulk up or build muscle? So many gay men are, obsessed with the gym in a healthy way. It's a healthy, affirmative sport to do, to be involved in workouts and bodybuilding and weight training, but that's not for everybody, and it doesn't need to be for everybody. Do you want to be leaner? Do you want to have more stamina in sex? I get that request a lot about I want to last longer, particularly with erectile functioning. Or do I want to get more rest and listen when my body needs to take a break from talking on the phone or video conferencing or visualizing a computer or phone screen or typing a lot of stuff from emails to work reports? Do I need to be walking and ambulating more, or maybe less this year? In general, do I need more exercise or do I need more rest? Most people need to make a fine-tuning adjustment about that. Do I want to change anything about my relationship to food, more or less or different? To sleep. Most people need more sleep. Sleep is just kind of a chronically, underfed resource for most of us. What kind of exercise would we like to do in order to feel more nourished and complete in our bodies, and then extend that into sexual health? When we can have new goals that are what we call specific, measurable, and time limited, as my colleague in Detroit, Joe Kort, Dr. Joe Kort, he recently described this in a popular TikTok video about New Year goals. And he was really emphasizing, encouraging people to make goals that are very specific and somehow measurable and kind of time limited, so you set yourself up for success. And that might have to do with diet, exercise, something about your housekeeping or where you live, something about your financial accounting and your spending and your saving, something about your communicating with others, in all kinds of ways, at home, with your family, in your work, with your friends, in your community. What about goals that are specific, measurable, and maybe even time limited in sex? Do you want to spend a month experimenting as a top or as a bottom, seeking out sex with partners who evoke that role? What would be a new box to check or a new territory to explore, even if it's just for a portion of what this new year means for us? We can invoke the self-empowerment to refresh our approach to just about anything. We got a new attitude, the old 80s song from Patti LaBelle. Can't remember the lyrics, but a new attitude. Look up that song on Amazon Music or Spotify, wherever you get your music. Patti LaBelle, Labelle, New Attitude. And it's very upbeat and very empowering. But about our work, our jobs, our career, our approach to work, our self-esteem. Most gay men need a little boost in their self-esteem because we take so much crap globally for such a long time. The politicians and the groomers and, there's just all this stuff usually coming from the Republican right-wing party in the United States to the more conservative parties in other countries. And, all of this stuff in the media has a tendency to undermine our self-esteem because it's just so relentless and it's just so ubiquitous. What do we want to refresh about approach in our relationships? Can we take it down a notch? I'm always telling my couples, take it down a notch with the fights and the arousal and, God's sake, the screaming, Stop screaming and start talking in your relationships. What do you want to do about your diet? Do you want to give yourself a little bit of a break and let yourself have some junky, salty, sugary food once in a while? It's not going to kill you. Or do you do too much of that and you want to, chomp on a vegetable once in a while? What do you want to refresh about your exercise? If you mainly do machines, do you want to do free weights? Do you mainly do weight training and you want to try running or swimming or hiking? What about your personal habits? A lot of people at the new year really want to get a grip on their time management. Time management is one of the more frequent coaching skills that I do when I do coaching work, because our time in life, ultimately, but even in the course of our day, is a resource. And we want to always spend our resources of time, energy, and money according to our own values, priorities, and goals. And sometimes that's out of whack. Sometimes we need to do work to refresh our approach to personal habits in order to kind of close that gap from where we are to where we want to be. What kind of sociological involvement do we want to do? So many gay men I talk to, if they're, kind of commercially good looking, have no problem getting laid. Other guys do. If you're one of the out groups and somehow, not getting a lot of messages on the apps because you're not whatever, young, muscular, pretty, whatever, guys tend to say to me that they tend to get hookups or sex much more easily than they do just social events with either other individuals or couples to couples kind of thing. So think about what would refresh your approach to a sociological involvement this year. But we can also do this about sex. We don't need to have the same sex in the new year that we did in the last, unless that really works for us. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This isn't for everybody. We sometimes, get it right one of these years, and we say, that works for me. All of these things. Once you really get in the groove of what works for you, well, then stick with it. I was thinking yesterday, Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, my favorite movie, she did a series of commercials in the U.S. in the 1970s for Maxwell House Coffee. And she played Cora, the general store owner. And Cora used to always tout Maxwell House Coffee. And they ran a series of ads where somebody would come in the store and they'd mention something that they were doing and ask Cora what she was working on and why she did something or used something. And she would say, in her clipped little voice, when something works, you stick with it. And stick with Maxwell House Coffee. When something works, you stick with it. And I think that that's really true, because when you think about consistent exercise, consistent diet, consistent savings and investing, I work with a lot of guys on that. When something works, you stick with it. But also, if something doesn't work, you need to have the self-empowerment to change it and not just take everything lying down and helplessly. No, that's too passive approach to your own life. So that's how we keep up with the times and evolve at different ages, different developmental stages. I work with guys a lot on developmental psychology. Who we are in our 40s and 50s is different, very different from our teens or our 20s, and our 60s or 70s yet again, and our 80s yet again. I started work recently with a guy who is 80. And what's dating like when you're 80 years old as a single gay man in a big city? That stuff happens. What do we do to to stay fresh? What are some new things that, just kind of help to refresh our outlook for the new year? So even if we ultimately double down on what has always worked for us in the past, we always have an opportunity to consider our contract option to re-up or renegotiate the terms of the contract with life. So, if you would like more specific help in reaching your goals in this new year, please consider psychotherapy. If you have a psychotherapy disorder or issue that you'd like some support of, the biggies: depression, anxiety, ADD, OCD, panic disorder. I see a lot of them. But that would be for residents of the state of California in the U.S., where I'm licensed to practice. Whole different ball game with coaching for life or your career or executive or relationship goals, and that's more of a national and global work that I do. I do both. They're very separate professional issues, and there's a lot of laws that demand that those are very separate professional issues, and we have to be very clear on that. But I can explain more about that if you would like to work with me. I would be happy to help. Also, if you like this podcast show, and so many of you have been so sweet in sending text messages and emails and stuff that you really enjoy the show, and that's great because I record it and I never know, who's really listening to it out there in the world. I get some stats about, this being heard in odd countries of the world that I barely ever heard of and probably will never visit. But it's fun to know, the show has that reach. But, if you like it, please consider a rating or maybe a review of the show and share it with others whom you think might benefit from these episodes. Because we want to help as many guys as possible, and we want to kind of get the word out. And you know how it is with social media. Everything's about these ratings and numbers and all that stuff. I don't really earn much on this. We recently started advertising on episodes. I'm sorry if that's annoying, but, hopefully it's not that intrusive with my podcast distributor. And you can always suggest topics for new episodes. You can email me at ken@gaytherapyla.com. Gaytherapyla.com is my website that has the blog and information on my services and stuff like that. Or you can call or text me internationally if you can, or in the U.S. or North America at 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. So Happy New Year, thanks, and I'll see you next time.